Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus says don't believe the rumors. The RNC is standing by Donald Trump. He made that clear a short time ago in an emergency phone call to RNC members. We have audio of that call, and it's remarkable. Take a listen.
More a little later. First of all, I want to make it very clear that the RNC is in full coordination with the Trump campaign, and we have a great relationship with them. If there's any takeaway from this call, that's the takeaway. Nothing has changed in regard to our relationship, and we remain very much involved and together at all levels of making these decisions on how best to run the operation across the country. Obviously, the last 72 hours have had its challenges, and like all of you, I don't condone what was said on that video that was released on Friday. And I think you saw my statement on that on Friday. I think I was probably the first or second person to issue a statement in regard to that video. And in fact, the campaign itself doesn't defend the words in that video. Neither does Donald Trump, and he didn't. And neither did Kellyanne Conway or anyone else affiliated with the campaign. So I think that's very clear. I am happy that Donald apologized a few different times about it. He apologized to the American people. He apologized to his family. He was embarrassed. He was ashamed. And honestly, I can tell you that that's very heartfelt because I've seen it one-on-one with him over the weekend, and it's not something that was just said at a debate. It's something that he understands and feels, as Governor Pence said, in his heart. But the Trump and the campaign and Mike Pence, of course, wanted the weekend to address this issue with the voters directly without a lot of crosstalk, without the RNC inserting itself in the middle of it. And that's why we stayed out of this and obviously wanted this issue to be taken care of at the debate. And I think it was. And I think you saw that it was addressed immediately by our nominee, Donald Trump. Same issue with the Sunday shows. It was a campaign issue, and it was a campaign decision to make sure that they had their campaign spokesman out on the Sunday shows talking about it, and I think they did that. I wanted you to understand that because there had been, obviously, in the last 24 hours or 36 hours, a lot of false rumors that we didn't want to engage in before the debate last night, which is very, very important. So here we are. Again, nothing has changed in our support for our nominee, as you know, who was duly elected, and one of the jobs of our party is to support the nominee of our party. I mean, if there's any one thing that is our job to do, it is to support the nominee that was clearly elected by more voters than any Republican in the history of our party, and obviously moved on to get the nomination at the convention.
That was Reince Priebus, an emergency call with RNC members. And now I want to go ahead and bring in CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris in Washington. Steve, you were listening along with us. Priebus says that he believes Donald Trump's apology on Friday or on Sunday was heartfelt. Do you think Mr. Priebus is being heartfelt when he says there is no division and he is in total coordination, as well as the Republican Party being in total coordination with the Trump campaign?
Sure, the RNC is in total coordination. They have people working out of Trump Tower with the Trump campaign to help his candidacy. Donald Trump has relied on the RNC for organization, has really outsourced a lot of the organization to the RNC. And so that's not going to change just because of what has happened. I think what Priebus is basically admitting is that the ties between the Trump campaign and the RNC are so deep at this point that there's almost nothing he could do even if he wanted to do something. So he's putting a brave face on this by saying we're working together. This is all about the good of the party. It's all about the top of the ticket. But keep in mind, financially, they have campaign fundraising mechanisms that are tied together. The Trump campaign and the RNC have a victory committee that raises money for both the party and the campaign. The RNC is also, as Reince Priebus said, These are voters, Republican voters, who voted for Donald Trump to be the nominee of the party. So how can the party, at least in his mind, go against the will of the voters that was expressed during the primary season? And so ultimately, that seems to be Priebus's bottom line. He said that on this call. He's been saying it pretty much all throughout whenever criticism is raised about the top of the ticket.
Yeah, Mr. Priebus there saying nothing has changed, and yet, of course, something has changed because today the highest-ranking elected Republican, Paul Ryan, has said he will not help Donald Trump get elected. Why doesn't he address that?
Because there's two different tracks that are going on here. So Ryan is looking out for his members, Republican members of the House, and the Republican Senate, who he's out there helping get elected. And he understands that they have a messaging problem with Donald Trump. And so he's basically saying to them, you take it into your own hands how you want to deal with the messaging. If you want to embrace Trump and you think that's going to help you get elected, go ahead and do it. And if you want to go run against Donald Trump, you want to throw him under the bus because you think that will help you get elected, go ahead and do that. That's just fine. That's different, and I think a different strategy than what the RNC needs to do, which is the RNC needs to make sure that Republicans get out and vote. And so if the RNC dumped Trump at this point, they would alienate millions of voters. Keep in mind there were 14 million voters in the primaries that voted for Donald Trump. And also keep in mind that if the last 3 presidential cycles are any indication, the person who loses in November will receive at least 60 million votes across this country. That's a lot of people who will at least be supporting Donald Trump in the general election. Those are a lot of Republicans or a lot of people who might be interested in the Republican Party that you don't want to alienate by throwing the guy under. And so Priebus is more concerned about the overall Republican Party and the future of Republican Party, while Ryan is, I think, looking at House and Senate races and making sure they keep the majority in Congress. And
the energy level in the call from Mr. Priebus didn't seem especially high. It didn't seem to take a special pleasure in going to bat for Donald Trump. He says they simply have a job to do. It is their job. Does that level, that tone, strike you as different from campaign seasons past?
Well, sure. I mean, I think it's got to be very hard for people like Reince Priebus. He's not in an easy position. You know, again, he at least is saying publicly he's working for the good of the party. And what that means is he wants to make sure that the party is on solid footing financially, it's on solid footing in terms of messaging, and he doesn't want to alienate the voters that support the Republican Party. But at the same time, it's got to be hard for these folks to continue to defend the kinds of things that Donald Trump has been saying. As we've seen, he's created a lot of controversy, he's alienated a lot of people, he's offended a lot of people with the things he's been saying. And so I can't imagine it's an easy position for Reince Priebus to be out there working with a guy who a lot of people are very, very upset with, a lot of people are offended by, but at the same time, he's got to be working on behalf of what he views as the good of the party. I think it's a tough balance, it's a tough tightrope to walk. I don't think there's a lot of excitement in his voice for a reason, and I think that's why. It's because it's just a really tough road for him to haul.
A tough road indeed. Steve Chaggaris, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks.